I'm Alia El-Bermani. I'm a fine artist. I make paintings for a living. I paint people and still lifes, and today Miss M has asked me to do a demonstration for you, and I thought I would start with the basics of portraiture, give you some groundwork to start with, and then I have a model here who's going to help us do a refined drawing of just her head and shoulders. So I'm going to start by just giving you some basic proportions to work with. We'll start with frontal view, and a really good way to think about when you're drawing a head. In the frontal position, you can start with just an egg shape, which is just an oval, and you can do a really rough egg shape. It doesn't have to be perfect. And with frontal, you're gonna draw a straight line all the way through the middle. So once you have the midline, this is where you'll find your features. Some standard proportion measurements. If you're measuring from the top of the head, now remember, not the hairline, but the very tippity top of the head, all the way to the chin. In the middle is where the eyes will fall. In between where the eyes fall and the chin will be the bottom of the nose. And in between the bottom of the nose and the bottom of the chin will be the middle of the lips. Now again, these are just general proportions, and they will help you begin your layout of your individual, but you want to remember that everybody has a little bit of asymmetry, a little bit of individuality, and so these things might not line up exactly when you're working with a live model. Also, with general proportions for the ears, you'll look and find the ear in frontal view is just above the eye to the bottom of the nose, and same thing on the other side. Then you can, when you're working with a model, get into more detail and more of the features. Now I'm going to do the same thing in profile for you, and you'll see how the measurements compare. Okay, so in profile, there's actually two egg shapes. I'm going to have this head face this other head that we've drawn. You have one oval here, and then for the cranium, the back of the head, you have another egg shape. So here's where our midline is from the frontal view. You still want your eyes about the center. Your nose, again, if you have the chin from between your eyes and the bottom of your chin is the bottom of the nose. Right in the middle of the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin is the center line for your mouth. The ear is always behind the jaw. That's a common flaw that amateurs make. They'll put the ear before the jaw, and there's actually a bone in your jaw that protects your eardrum from damage. So make sure that you notice where the ear is, and again, just like in the frontal view, the bottom of the ear is just about where the bottom of the nose is, and it goes up to just above the eye. There's also an angle that you have to find for the direction of the ear. And these basic proportions will help you get started on working on a more individual portrait. Okay, now we have our model with us and we have her lit, and we're going to do a 3/4 profile using her features to get a more rendered portrait drawing. So we're going to get started in basically the same manner that we did with the general proportions. I'm going to look for those egg oval shapes. And I'm going to keep it really loose and work general to specific. And in a 3/4 profile, the center line is not in the center anymore. It's off to one side or the other. In this case, it's off to the left of her face. So her nose and the center of her eyes, the corner of her eyes, are going to fall on that line. So from the top of her head to the bottom of her chin, we're going to find her eyes. And we have to remember, in 3/4, we have one side turning away from us. So this line is now going to curve away from us. Between her eyes and the bottom of her chin, in the middle, is the bottom of her nose. And in between the bottom of her nose and the bottom of her chin is the center line for her mouth. Another good trick to notice, if you take a pencil, you're going to hold it up straight with a straight elbow. I'm placing this straight line on the corner of her mouth, and if I follow that straight line up, it hits right in the center of her eye. So that's another standard of measurement that we can follow. So we know that the center of her eye is about here. So now we have the basics. Let's see, I gotta put her ear in there too. So on Heather, her ear is actually just below her eye, and the bottom of her ear goes to just about the corner of her mouth. It's a little bit lower than our standards, but that's what makes her an individual, and noticing those individual traits is what's going to make your portrait have a real likeness. So now I have the general shape, and it doesn't look very pretty right now, but it actually has a lot of information that I can use. And I'm also, if what I have on here measures differently when I'm looking at my individual, I'm not going to be afraid to change what I have here. It's just charcoal. I can easily wipe it away. So I'm going to keep working here, and I'm going to start looking at big shapes. So right now I'm going to look at the big shape of her forehead, where it turns to her brow, her cheek. Trying to notice these big general shapes. I'm going to keep saying this, working general to specific. So I still see my center line. I still see where the bottom of her chin should be. I've got to get the top of her head in here. Reestablishing my center line. I'm going to take a measurement and compare this distance from the center line to the edge of her eye out and see how many of those wide her head is at that point. So using my straight edge, I'm putting the tip of my straight edge on the edge of her eye and putting my finger on the corner of her nose. Then shifting it over, putting the tip now where my finger was, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. So I am seeing about 5.5 distances all the way across. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. So maybe I've gotten her a little wide there, or maybe my center line needs to be moved.